Okay, great. Well, now I'll call a meeting to order for the ESInet user group meeting on January 28th of 2026. A handful of us are at the Capitol after a nice legislative breakfast. So thanks for those that showed up here on this under CCOA's umbrella. Representative Chad Clifford sponsored us this morning and introduced the 911 community on the floor of the House, which was really nice to have that representation. So thank you for those that made that happen. Kimberly and Kathy for making that effort. Remember to sign in as if you just joined us. Jennifer mentioned that we do have a chat. Welcome back, chat. And you can click the link in there to sign in. And the first thing up on our agenda is going to be elections for chair, vice chair, and secretary. There is a vacuum that's close to me, so hopefully that's not impeding on the sound. I will open up the floor for nominations for all positions. It is not the organization that the vice chair rotates into the chair and secretary moves up. It is a vote for each position separately. So Jennifer, how do you want to do the voting? First we have to have nominations, and then how do you want to do voting process?
Well, we do have a nomination in chat. Kimberly nominated yourself to serve as chair and Kathy Greeley to serve as vice chair.
2 years in a row. This time she's next to me, so I can, fight back later.
Kick her under the table.
Yeah, totally.
You can also take other nominations from the floor.
Okay, so floor is open for nominations for all three positions.
And I am happy to continue serving as secretary. I'm also happy to mentor someone else through the position if they would like to serve as secretary. Thank you, Kimberly. Steve, can you see hands raised?
I can. Carl has his hand up. Thank you.
This is Carl. I would second Kimberly's nominations.
Thank you, Carl. This is going to be really easy if there isn't competition. So any other nominations? Going once.
Everybody else can step back.
Twice. All right. Nominations are closed for the three positions for the same three people doing the same three roles, and all of us accept that. We need to do a formal vote.
Yes, but due to the size of the meeting, if you want to call for any opposed, that probably works just as well.
Okay, that sounds good. Any opposed, raise your hand, put it in the chat. Opposed to the three nominations for the three positions. All right, somewhat disappointing, but we are pushing all three positions, same roles. Thank you, everybody. We're happy to serve again. I think the three of us worked well together, and we can continue leading this group into 2026. Next thing on the agenda is going to be the metrics and report review. Tracy.
All right, so this just as a reminder, because I know we're meeting a little later in the month this time, this is December's data. That first graph there, test completion codes, this is the network performance only. This is the pinging to the servers kind of continuously, and all of that has fallen into the requirements for the tariff. Everything looking good there. If we look at the next one, this one is our voice quality as opposed to network. And this is by PSAP. We want to see everything right at that number 4 or above. So for December, all of the PSAPs did fall into the range required in the tariff here as well. Unlike that, that one being by PSAP, this is our ECMC route. Again, if you look from December 1st until the 31st, everything is right at that 4 or above, which is what we like to see and what's required. The next couple, a little bit different. Packet loss percentage. This is less than or equal to that. Whoops, let me get my feet here. 0.5. And we didn't have anything fall out of range here. I did ask because I know it was brought up last time. I have a ticket open still. There was a question around why the difference, right, between Denver and Miami. One seems to have worse, I guess, marks than the other. I have followed up on that a couple of times, and so far, the knock on my side has not been able to find any definitive reason as to why. They don't have the issue closed, but I did bring it to their attention. I just don't have a response for you guys today. And then the final one that we report out on through our Splunk data here, this is jitter. Again, the measurements are in microseconds versus milliseconds, less than or equal to 20 milliseconds. And that is what is shown in this graph for the month of December. And that is all I have on that one.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Next on the agenda, I believe, is the status report. So why don't you go right into that?
Keep going. I did get a few updates on this one. The network performance project, that's kind of this top one we called out specifically to Estes Park. I know I have talked to our engineer, which most of you know is Kevin, and he has gone up through his chain of command. Thus far, Kimberly, I know that you're on mute. The documentation that we have asked for from the vendor, they have not been willing to provide it. So I would like to maybe get with you offline and see how you would like us to proceed. I can set up another call that would include the engineers, and I think Daryl was on it as well as Jennifer and Kathy, and we can have a follow-up. But thus far, we have not been provided that information. Next one here is
Hey, Tracy, there's
Tracy?
a chat. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead, Jennifer.
I sort of can. Let me see if I have Kevin or Steve or somebody on, because they're going to be able to do it more than I am, maybe Jeff. It was documentation specific to, I think, the microwave solution in Estes Park, I believe, and where the diversity was, and the actual address information is what we were asking for, and we didn't receive it. I'm told that they're not going to provide it, but that's why I said I'd like to have a phone call with you anyway and pull the folks back in that are more familiar with the data as well as the solution, and see if there's a different way we can explain it, different information we can ask for. But this was as of Friday afternoon. I was told that they're not going to provide it. And yes, I will shoot out a meeting invite and we can figure out where to go moving forward. The next one for Adams County here, I was kind of waiting on my team as well as the customer to see if the numbers were ported before we can close this one. I don't know if there's anyone on today from AdCom or Jeff Winkleman, if you happen to have heard from them. I don't know if this got completed or not because I didn't receive notification.
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button.
No
Excuse me. Yes, as far as I know, everything has been ported. We're waiting for paperwork and everything else as far as disconnection of the other circuit. But as far as I'm aware, the last thing that I have noted is that they have completed that migration.
Okay. Numbers ported. I'll make that update on this one. ECATS reporting, this is one that is between El Paso Teller and my ECATS team directly. I can share with you that the last couple ECATS meetings I have been on, I don't know if they have new people or if they've changed their process, but they are getting to those older tickets much faster than they have in the past. This one is just called out separately simply because it's been kind of ongoing with the PSAP and ECATS. Westco is another one. Andrew and the PSAP were working directly on this one, continuing to share updates, changes, and edits. I think we had a resource change in our knock, but to the best of my knowledge, this one is still just information being shared as it comes up and examples.
That's correct.
Do you have any additional information or findings since last month?
Was that for Andrew?
Yes, Andrew. Yep.
Excuse me. No, not at this time. We were waiting to see if any more examples came in on that issue, and there haven't been that I'm aware of. So, but I have the the knock on an email, waiting to investigate anything that comes in, but there hasn't been anything.
Okay. So it's been a little bit since we've had reoccurrences, but we've never received a definitive explanation or finding the aha moment. We definitively found the cause, but it has been a little while since we've had one of these happen. I would note that they stopped happening after we made some of Wesco's services non-dialable. And I guess at this point, it's been long enough without an occurrence that we would be okay with suspending this issue if we can put it in a parking lot in case it comes back. I don't think we're okay with fully signing off on it because we don't have a definitive answer from CenturyLink on the cause, but we could suspend it off the tracker or to a different sheet.
Okay. Matt, what I could do is I'll make the note in there that we are going to suspend this because we haven't seen the issue once the non-dialable project was completed. But you are still waiting for kind of a root cause from Lumen. I can just move it to the bottom of this exact same sheet.
Yeah, and that's why I'm offering just suspend it. But we still want to see a definitive answer as much as possible.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Matt, that it definitely correlated with the removal of the dialable numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good that it's not happening, but we still don't have that definitive answer yet. So take a look at that again, but appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay. Garfield County, we did go back and re-request the quote on this one. I think this was for Carl. When we initially put this bid out, it was a couple of years ago, Comcast did not bid on this site. So that's why it was slated to go Lumen, just kind of for historical background. I had a call with Sharon and she is escalating to try to find out the status of that quote from the vendor. It hasn't reached the account team if we have it internally. So she's escalating to see where we're at with that quote. We don't have a reason not to use them. We just don't have a quote from them. And the last one there, I thought this one too, we still had tickets open with the knock. This is part of the OSP migration to Verizon. And again, it was one that we were kind of monitoring to see if it continued and what happened. I'd be interested if either, Andrew or someone on my team, as well as the PSAP, has an update on this one. It looks like, we were successful in testing it, but again, this might be one just like Wesco where it's kind of suspended until we see it again, or are we still seeing the issue?
I have not heard of any more issues related to that migration.
Okay. If we don't have anyone from the PSAP on, I'll follow up with them in an email and just ask the question, right? Are you still, we haven't seen any, are you still having this problem? Shall we move it to kind of like we said, kind of to the bottom of this chart in case it comes up again, or are we okay to close it?
Tracy, I do see Zach from Vail on. Zach, are you able to come off mute and provide an update? You might not have access to his microphone.
Okay. I can shoot an email. I have time right after the call today. I'll do that. The next few kind of circle back to our network performance project. Again, this top one is the delivery of those circuits. Ongoing projects, I'm sending out weekly updates as I get them so that we know kind of who's going where for what. Just got approval today. It'll go on my chart for Lamar. Trevor is okay with our vendor coming out on the 29th to do an install, and then Denver, the location on Josephine Street, I'm working with Jacob at that location. The request is to come out on February 3rd, which would be next Tuesday. So those are the next two kind of big ones. I have about 7 locations that have both circuits installed. Sharon is working on some paperwork to put the request into Entrado for the activations. Once I have those dates available, I'll be reaching out to the individual PSAPs to try and schedule activation dates with you guys. We did one this past, a week and a half ago for Castle Rock. It went very well. We don't expect any downtime because you're already live on the circuit, but it did go well. Both circuits are now activated for Castle Rock. We're going to leave everything for several weeks, and then we'll start processing the disconnect of those older circuits. But progress is coming on this one. Like I said, as soon as we can get the information Entrado needs on those 7 or 8 sites, we will start activating those in February, March. I think we're about not quite 50%, it's like 47% of the circuits are in place. So we'll start seeing more of those activations come through. The middle mile piece of it, that's something that comes from Tressa and Tim. I think if my memory is correct, they submitted their last requirement was either last week or this week. So that information comes from our regulatory folks. And the same goes for the phase 1 and phase 2 FCC orders. As information is available, Tim and Tressa are willing to provide that, and we pull in Paul Brown if necessary. But those that are kind of in the grayish area, we're going to keep them on the tracker. But there are alternate groups within Lumen that will provide those updates. I wish I had better news on the New Mexico, Colorado call transfers. We had a call on this last week. Angela is one of the lead program managers running this countrywide, so not just for Colorado. There's still some red lines between Motorola, Entrado, and Lumen. So we have not done any of those testings or transfers yet. And then not really an update for Wyoming either. We kind of have talked about that in the past. That one takes a little more time, a little more planning, and some funding as well. So I have not gotten an official project request to do Colorado, Wyoming. What's next? Star code cleanup. I think we're just kind of letting that information sit with the PSAPs, making sure everybody knows what's changing before you guys give the list back to me and Entrado goes in and makes those changes. We want to make sure everyone has plenty of time to get the correct information.
Tracy, just to follow up on that, I've been sending out that notification with the weekly or every other week meeting emails that I send out. And after every single one, gratefully, I get people reaching out to have the star code list. So a reminder, we did update the star code list, as Tracy said. And that means that all of the PSAPs need to update their speed dials and their resources at the consoles. So if this is news to you in this meeting, please reach out to me so I can send you the updated star code list. I don't want to have Entrado delete the unused star codes until after we're fairly confident that the old versions are not sitting out there somewhere. Because once those star codes have deleted, if someone's using an old version, then your 911 call that you're trying to transfer isn't going to go anywhere, and that's not an outcome that we want. So please reach out to me if you don't have that updated star code list. And Tracy, I think at this point we'll probably shoot for mid-February to late February to have Entrado delete the unused ones.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you.
CGIS requirements. Jeff did create a survey last quarter for us. We have gotten some of those responses back. Last time we got together, it was less than 50%. So again, this is just a survey. We're trying to understand and make sure that it's clear what credentials or what requirement you have at each site, right? If you have to have an escort, if you don't, if you need the CGIS certification, we just want to make sure we have all of that. And as of a couple weeks ago, we still had less than 50% of the responses. So kind of like Jennifer said on the top one, if you're not sure what we're talking about or you need the survey again, reach out to myself or Jeff and we can get it to you.
As of today, Tracy, we've got 34 responses that have come back.
Okay. And then the last one, we're leaving this one on there. 2023 and 2024, we did our statewide ECATS rollout. I still do have several locations that aren't using it, various reasons. A lot of them were waiting for new equipment, which we just completed in December for Logan County. So we did reach out and get the ECAT system set up for Sterling, and that's the most recent one. On the weekly email that Steve forwards to you guys from me, I do have the locations at the bottom there that are not currently using ECATs. So if any of you want to or want some more information, please let me know. It's really simple to get Entrado on the phone and get this hooked up and going for you. There are just a few left out there that don't have it. And unless you guys have new items for me to add, that is all I have on this.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Jennifer, can you throw the agenda up? All right, next up is follow-up on GIS routing project. Rich, are you on the call?
I'm looking here. I don't think I see him. I know that we have Caroline as our contact at Entrado for this, and we have had several counties working with her, providing information. There was some training meetings that took place, and as of today, she was still working individually with folks as you guys have questions. So I think it's moving along as expected. Haven't had any negative feedback from anyone that it's not moving forward. So
Tracy, I have a quick question for you, if that's all right. Tracy, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Is there a schedule, and I apologize if you've already shared this, but is there a schedule that you guys have internally for when you might be reaching out to which PSAPs? Because I did have someone ask me about the timing, and I don't know if I've seen one.
Well, the only thing that has gone out yet from Entrado is that initial list of folks that were going to go through the training and the meeting with her. And I can't remember the reason that group was put together. It was an acronym that I wasn't familiar with. But once they have the GIS data, then Entrado is going to reach out to the individual folks that have provided their data. I don't think there's a set schedule yet for everyone. When we talked about this, I think Rich did it right before the end of the year again. I sent out the initial, this is what the project is, and please send your information here. And it's just as it comes in right now. Whomever's information they have, I think in February, then they're going to run with it in March. And then in March, they'll run with it in April. But I certainly can ask them. Until they have the data from each individual PSAP, there's not a good way to put them on a schedule.
Perfect. And the specific question I had is, who should they send their data to? Is that going to be you or Rich or Caroline or?
It's going to Caroline. Her email address and information were in that original email, but I certainly can send it back out again. Everything just flows to her.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you got your hand up, Matt?
Yeah, thanks. Just our compliments to Entrado and Caroline, especially on the quality of the two initial training meetings. It's been good.
Great to hear. Thank you.
All right, anything else in substitution for Rich's report? Or questions for Tracy or anyone from Entrado or CenturyLink? Jackie's got a question in the chat. It says, can they just use the data that they have and roll it out to everyone?
Sorry, guys, I put you on mute, Jackie. I would have to take that back to Rich. I think the original ask was for the PSAPs to provide it, because ultimately you guys have the responsibility of knowing where your boundaries are. And I know that if something comes in, and I'm just going to use Boulder and Longmont as an example because I'm more familiar with that area. If the Boulder and Longmont data both comes in and there's any confusion about where those borders are, that's when Entrado is going to reach out and try to filter and see what's correct. But I believe the ask from Entrado was to have everyone send in their own initially. Again, not 100% sure, and I will ask.
All right, thanks for filling in, Tracy. Anything else on that topic for GIS routing? Nothing heard. Jeff Winkleman, you're up for mandatory escalation issues.
At this point, I don't have anything additional. I'm still waiting for some information to come back, so I don't want to hold things up, but I will see if I can get that either by the end of this week or the end of next week and update the information.
Jeff, just to express some frustration, because we've been waiting on this for a long time, and when PSAPs or authorities have issues, we really need that information. So if there's any way to expedite that, since it's been on the to-do list for a long time, we'd appreciate it.
I understand. Right now, the only thing I can recommend or suggest as far as the escalation is to utilize the list itself as far as escalations, and or with Andrew as the service manager.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And moving down the list, February improvement plan filing, Tressa.
Hey, Steve, and everybody. This is Tim. I can take this one. So there's, as you all know, there's a lot of things going on. And so one thing that we were thinking about doing for this filing is going pretty small with it and focusing on the remaining locations from the current plan where we are building diversity to is to focus on the locations that weren't in that current plan. And so we're looking at similar to how we did it before, where we put things out to bid, but we're also looking at additional types of providers like DeGero and Starlink, and not only adding diversity to the locations that weren't on the current list, but then even adding a third connection to the ones that are getting diversity right now. So we're looking at putting this across the entire state with a solution, something like that, in addition to trying to get some tertiary providers to respond to some of these requests for bid, like we did last time. So we think that's probably the most prudent thing to do. We've got, the current plan going out there. We've got the GIS being implemented. We're talking about some additional optional services that had been out on the table, putting those back out. We still have the issue with the project management and even cloud call taking or delivery. So we're looking at those changes to the tariff needing to be made, and so we felt that it would probably make the most sense if we focused on a smaller project for the upcoming improvement plan. And an additional kind of wrinkle to it all, many of you probably know we're selling a bunch of our assets to AT&T. And while that won't have any impact on our 911 service or on the ESInet or our relationship with Intrado, that is having some resource reassignment processes going on right now. So again, I think trying to take on projects like we have in the current improvement plan would probably be too much. Having said that, we are still working though behind the scenes on some additional projects. So we are working with CDOT right now on the Wolf Creek Pass fiber to connect down into Pagosa. That's just taking a long time. It's a very slow process with them, but we are working on that. And then I know historically we've had the project around Telluride on the table, and so those efforts continue as well. And then we're looking at a few other of these locations where we've had some single connection places like Yuma and Rangeley and things like that. So we're hoping that maybe this project where we focus on the diversity, the last mile diversity, would help those locations as well, because at least we could have a secondary connection using, again, something like a Starlink or a DeGero or something to that effect. So that's what we're looking at right now as our project to put forward. So I'll stop there and see Matt's got anything.
Tim, we definitely have some questions, so I'll start with Matt, and then there's one in the chat, and then there's another one at this table. So Matt, go ahead.
Thank you. Tim, are you guys thinking of doing an amendment to the current 2-year plan or a wholly new 2-year plan?
It would just be a new plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the question, you said amendment, right? You were kind of quiet there, Tim.
No, a new plan. We would just
new.
let this one expire and you replace it with the next one.
Okay, new plan. Kimberly put a question in the text asking when a draft will be available to socialize with the whole group.
I hope real soon. I don't have a date. I'm still waiting for some information to come back, some details.
Okay, another question I've got is at the last EUG meeting, you guys were going to offer up an opportunity for any of us to be able to provide feedback before or during your drafting, even if we haven't seen a draft review. Is there a way for us to provide feedback? And I'm, specifically speaking for my own PSAP that had the issues with the contractors and vendors and layers, that we wanted to give some suggestions that could really help everybody moving forward with the improvement plan.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate you asking that. We are still interested in hearing your feedback and incorporating that. And I don't think in this particular plan, and it depends on what it is, I suppose, but we obviously are running out of time, and we're trying to focus, just kind of remain laser focused on a project. But we still would love to hear all of the ideas and suggestions that anyone has. And they can be sent to myself or Tressa.
Okay. Jennifer, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted Tim to clarify, when you said letting the current improvement plan expire, you meant work through it and finish it and then file the next one, right?
Correct.
Not okay. Just making sure.
Additional questions for Tim. Another one popped up in the chat. Kimberly's asking.
I do see a question from Kimberly about the rate. So yeah, the current rate is only in place until March 1st of 27. And so then that, excuse me, would expire. And then the next charge if there is a next charge, would then go into place beginning on March 1st of 27 through March 1st of 29, based on how the rules are written.
Tim, can you confirm the date the new plan is going to need to be filed by? Or will CenturyLink be looking at an extension?
Yeah, the rule is February 15th. It's a Sunday this year.
Okay. Additional questions for Tim? Hearing nothing, anybody that has direct feedback that they'd like to see put into the new plan that's going to be filed by February 15th, send directly to Tressa and Tim for hopeful inclusion into the draft. We're getting towards the end. Any public comment on anything we've talked about today or anything new? Andrew.
Yeah, no immediate change, but I just wanted to let everybody know that for my organization at Lumen, we're changing a little bit this year. So we're going to have some currently, like for myself, I support 911 and state and local government. Those are going to be a little bit separated going forward and starting this year. So Michelle Devlin is on here. She is my peer, has a lot of experience with 911 and Colorado 911. Kind of over the first quarter here is going to the plan is for it to transition to her. So no change right now. You get anything that for me, send it to me. I'll start to include Michelle. And it'll probably, the change will be official, and she'll be working everything probably at the end of the first quarter. But um, and we'll get, all the information out that needs to be. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that transition is happening. I'm not going anywhere. So you can always reach out to me, but and continue to do so for now for 911 issues. But Michelle will be coming on board, and she's great. So just wanted to let everybody know.
And will you guys be sending out the detailed information on who to go to for what when the change actually happens?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, just no change as of today. I may just start including her in some things. But when it's more of an official that she's running with everything, that will be communicated ahead of time. Absolutely.
Matt?
Thanks. This is not directly an ESInet service issue. But I think it was last week, we suddenly lost our CenturyLink admin telephone service. Couldn't figure out why. Went several hours. Come to find out, CenturyLink disconnected our telephone service. We did not request that. We're still looking to hear from Jeff or somebody about what happened. We get, as everyone knows, we get emergency calls and a whole lot of other business-oriented calls on admin lines. And that's a critical thing to be just disconnecting by mistake.
Matt, this is Jeff. Excuse me. I did reach out to Brian, our technician, got the details on that. And I saw that Amber had called before this meeting. So as soon as we're done here, I'm going to be giving her a call back and give her the information I do have on that.
Okay. Not a good look.
I agree.
We got a question in the chat from Kimberly asking Andrew to reply to an email that's specifically to Jackson County. Andrew? Hopefully that information gets to Andrew. Jennifer, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on what Matt said, and this question is for Jeff. I know that last summer, CenturyLink was looking into changing the way that they looked at admin lines and moving them more up in the priority list and treating them more like 911 lines when they went out. I know that that's a monumental change inside CenturyLink's structure, but I think it'd be a good time to maybe update on how that process is going in light of what happened at Montrose.
The biggest thing that I can share, excuse me, is it always goes back to TSP. And I know since we've had that call and in the past several months, we've had requests to add TSP, and it's not just the admin lines. It can be added to any particular circuit itself. So that's the biggest thing that we can stress is to add that service. The company-wide initiative, and it's not just our company, it's going to be industry-wide, is to move off of TDM service, which would include POTS service, and migrate over to SIP itself. And as you said, it's not a quick process, but it's something else that will also help with this particular situation. So those are the things that we're working towards to be able to get, not just in Colorado, but across the country.
That's good, but man, I feel like there ought to be a way for the company to flag admin service circuits, no matter the type or the mode. You know, hey, this goes to a PSAP. We should really be double checking before we just disconnect their service.
No, I agree, and that's where the TSP would come into play. As far as the disconnect, a lot of those, I don't know that they have the resource. I can't even answer that, Matt, to be honest, because when the disconnect request comes in, an official disconnect request comes in, it goes through the proper channels and the processes for that. The case that you guys experienced, it was a one-off and is not a normal situation. But the TSP is the biggest thing as far as restoral of service itself.
But yeah, I mean, TSP's a good idea for everyone to add and pay for their engineered circuits and their telephone lines and so forth. But that's priority restoration. That's not the preventative measure that I think that we're asking for and that I believe Jennifer was referencing.
I don't know that we have the ability within the system to, for lack of better words, flag. I know for circuits, for the ESInet circuits and the old camera trunks, they are able to identify when those are 911, actually put a notation on that in the system itself. But as far as the POT service, they're not able to do that I'm aware of. I don't disagree with you as far as the severity of it and the importance to be able to do that. But as of today, I'm not aware of any way for them to actually be able to put an identifier or a marker other than the person that would be doing the disconnect or working on that circuit, looking at the address and be able to cross-reference that.
There's another comment from Kathy in the chat. Sounds like the same thing happened in Greenwood Village with a disconnect as well.
I see that. I will take a look to see if that's the same situation that happened in Montrose. And Kathy, if you have any information on as far as a ticket number or any additional information, if you could share that with me, that would be helpful.
She said Andrew Freeberg should have that information.
Okay.
And can we get those added to the tracker? So
Yeah,
it seems like it's a theme. So Tracy, can you please put both those on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to clarify for me, Kathy, those were admin lines as well?
That's what the chat note says, Tracy. Yes, she has confirmed that. Sorry, I'm
Okay.
trying to keep it on
I
mute
just
when I
thought
need
it
to.
disconnected. I wasn't sure it was the admin lines. There we go. Thank you. I was looking at people and not the chat.
I guess I'll ask, is there any other agency, PSAP authority that had experience with a disconnect recently? Right, if we hear of them or experience them, make sure they get reported and we can add them so we can get updates from CenturyLink. Any additional public comment or comments on anything that wasn't on the agenda from anyone on the call? Jennifer.
If everyone would permit me to put on my Colorado Nina APCO hat for a moment, just remind everybody that Flash Day for conference registration is February 4th, and it's a substantial discount. So if you're planning on sending people to conference or if you're planning to attend yourself, please mark your calendar and plan to register on February 4th. And we have the schedule, the breakout sessions, and the keynote and the pre-con all on our website. So everything you need to make a decision about who to send and whether you want to attend yourself is on our website. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any additional information, content, questions for the good of the order? All right, everybody, reminder, if you have any input for CenturyLink's new plan, send it to Tressa and Tim. Sounds like that plan's going to be filed in a couple weeks. It's important to get our input to them so they can include it. Our next meeting, it's quick because this one was delayed by a week due to the WIC presentation down in Denver. So thanks to those that participated in that for talking about emergency alerting and evacuations with all of our partner emergency managers last week. Next meeting's on the 11th, and we will see you all that morning. Thank you all for your participation, and have a wonderful week.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.